just give you sorry, forgot that. Okay, sorry.
No worries. So I'm going to go in and share my screen, just a moment. So Lou and I had a great conversation on Sunday, and we're very aligned on how we can empower facilitators to show up empathically and connect in spite of biases and blocks, and how we can really, am I sharing my screen now? No. And how we can create bridges of opportunity. So it's not working. Let me try again. Strange. Okay. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
All right, very good.
Yay.
Thank you. Let me move my, how do I remove my image there? I don't want to look at myself. I'll just do that. So the importance of empathy. So this is a little presentation that is supporting Lou and I in our continued evolution in coming up with a means to go from blocks to bridges. And within the blocks and bridges is something called bias that we're going to be talking about. But before we do that, I just want to talk about the importance of empathy to me. I believe, like Edwin, that empathy is a way of being connected. And I believe it's an experience where you are connected with another person's thoughts, feelings, and conditions from their point of view rather than your own. Whoops. I love this quote. It's beautiful. Our humanity depends on our ability to bestow humanity on others. This truth surpasses the business case for ending bias. It strengthens the culture case and underpins the justice case. We end bias for the sake of others and for our own. This speaks volumes to the role of the facilitator in elevating beliefs, judgments, conversations about how people feel so that we can be more empathic and connected. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about empathy blocks to bridges. These are the 5 contexts. What is a block and a bridge? Why people experience blocks? How people view empathy blocks? The role playing is something that Lou and I are going to continue to work on to present together in a video format. And what are some concerns? What are some challenges? This is interactive, so this I invite you to share in the chat or say that, raise your hand if you would like to speak, although I can't see you, so Edwin will have to speak up and share that with me. So how do you define empathy blocks? What is a block? A block is a verb. It makes the movement or flow in conversation, connection, and evolution difficult or impossible. I believe that these empathy blocks are actually an opportunity in disguise. Much like on our human journey in life, if we're lost, what do? We find connections to each other. When we find connections, we may continue to experience these blocks, but in those blocks, we're going to find meaning, as DJ often alludes to, the meaning making. And even then, we're going to continue to search to find our purpose in life and for what I like to call our North Star to unleash our human potential. I believe the empathy circle is the gateway to get there. So empathic bridges and empathic blocks, you can see from these pictures, the empathic block is often someone in their head walking alone. The empathic bridge is when we have human connection. 90% of our decisions are often led by unconscious biases. That is in itself a block. It's a bias. So these challenges to empathy take time. It takes time for us to be aware of them. It needs 100% of your attention. It means for you to be attuned to what your blocks are as a facilitator. You tend to focus more on your self-esteem when you face your biases, and you can recognize and acknowledge your history with a person. Are you playing a narrative? Are you continuing to be in a drama triangle? All things that are blocks to empathy. Why do people experience blocks? So Graham is someone that I have been partnering with here in our empathy circle, and he made this beautiful map that I think really depicts meaning making. and how person A can have their own self-awareness and awareness of others' communications to others, and how sometimes those can become blocks on our journey in communication with person B. 85% of the population, as we all know, desires to be more empathic. So what I am proposing is an empathy bridge toolbox, tools to help encourage empathy. That begins with defining empathy bridges. What is a bridge? It's a structure built over something, over a block, so that people can get across and connect. It's something that joins or connects. I believe practicing empathy bridges is a skill worth learning and practicing, and I believe this is where it really all begins. Frances Fry and Ann Morris have written a beautiful book that I've shared with each of you repeatedly called Unleashed. And for the first time, I'm sharing an image that I've created. I reached out to Frances and asked if I could build on her work. She said, build away. So much of her methodology of building trust is centered on Aristotle's ethos, logos, and pathos, empathy, logic, and authenticity. What I'm adding to the table is bias. This is to depict a round table, much like our circles, our empathy circles, and the bias that we bring to the table when we are judging empathy, logic, and authenticity, all three skills to really evolve and connect and build trust. These blocks are actually a crisis, opening the door to a world of opportunities where we can continue to expand our empathy and connect with each other. What's interesting about this and her work is that she says that there is an empathy wobble. That empathy wobble can show up in the face of bias. It can also show up in the face of our own bias against ourselves, which is depicted in Graham's picture as well. So it's that self-awareness. The other important factor is that it's not just a wobble that can get in the way, it's also an anchor. For example, I have an empathy anchor. It is how I connect with people. My authenticity is growing and my logic is continuing to grow, but I'm rooted in empathy for others. So much like the blocks, there are also positive blocks, such as caring or nodding in agreement. I consider those to be bridges and not blocks, and this is where Edwin and I will part ways. I believe that when I am expressing a positive nod, I am not agreeing with what the person says, rather I am agreeing with their emotion and their state of being. And for me, that is a way of being empathic. 9 out of 10 people find that they are better persons when they practice empathy, and 10 out of 10 say they benefit from other people's empathy. I believe empathy is the root of psychologically safe environments. When you have it, you can bring your human potential to all that you do. You welcome, celebrate, and cherish everyone in your presence. And when you don't, power and hierarchy dominate. When you have bias, power and hierarchy dominate. Those are the barriers that are maintained and reinforced. So how do we develop these empathic bridges? We are present. We become in tune. We look for the emotions of others, behavioral and non in speech and in actions. We also imagine ourselves in others' shoes. So I'm launching this Be Human First project where we introduce empathy into our daily life. We create a culture of empathy by doing 5 things that are really rooted in my life and in my own life story. When I was facing difficult circumstances with people who were more than less empathic, I would choose to be present. And when being present didn't work and they still lacked empathy, I would choose to be kind. When being kind didn't work and they still lacked empathy, I would be curious. When being curious didn't work, I would still try to connect and be trustworthy. And then even if that didn't work, I would choose to be a team player and know that helping them fulfill their human potential is part of my calling in life. I believe these 5 ways of being are empathic bridges that help us connect with others. So this is a beautiful quote. I love books. You can only understand people if you feel them in yourself. I think that is something that we all have the power to do. This is one of my concerns about the empathy circle. I believe in psychologically safe environments, we can show up and challenge all of the ways of thinking. I'm concerned about this illusory truth effect, and that when people tend to repeat drama triangles or ways of being, they start to believe them. And so people get stuck. So it's one of my concerns about the empathy circle that Lou and I are continuing to address, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And other than the 2 documents that I shared with you, if you'd like to take a look, I'm going to share my screen and show you the Excel spreadsheet. This actually lays out the challenges for the facilitator, the behavior. So for example, if the listener is leaving out a key portion of what was said, what the speaker could do, or the facilitator can ask the speaker to do to review their speaking style. And this is a way to measure, if it's a block. So we've created a list here of 17 different possible actions between the speaker and the listener to try to create bridges. We're not done working on this, but I'd love to have your input actively and collaboratively. And then I'd also like to share with you the Excel spreadsheet, the Word document that also kind of summarizes some of our thoughts. And I'd love to have your participation on it. So I see that one person needs to have access. I'm going to stop sharing and open the room for a beautiful empathy circle to hear what you guys think.
Did you want to open it to sort of popcorn or actual empathy circle with timed speakers and so forth?
Edwin, whatever you prefer. I don't feel this presentation is complete. It's a work in progress, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone else's thoughts are and how we can all collaborate together.
Hey, Jana.
I think you'll have to put the documents in again for Jana. I don't know.
Oh,
Do you
sure.
see the documents, Jana? Yeah,
Thanks, DJ.
sure.
Edwin, I think you originally wanted to have an empathy circle, and there was a question that was posed, but we could do that at the end and then just initially discuss what I shared. And I'm also happy to share the presentation in a chat if everyone would like to look at it on their own time as well after the session.
I would love to.
So you just want to do popcorn right now? Just everybody speak and okay,
Sure.
for whatever's kind of up for you. Yeah, the drama triangle. That's a concept I use a lot. It's kind of in the back of my mind in terms of thinking of empathy, and the drama triangle is there's a victim, perpetrator, rescuer is a framework where one person is doing something towards another person and is seen as the perpetrator, and then the person who's sort of receiving that is the victim, and then there's a person that tries to rescue the victim, and in the process of trying to rescue the victim, they become the perpetrator, and these roles kind of shift between the people, and it's like a continuous kind of a, I don't know, a continuous state, right, that we're just in, and you don't get out of it. So for example, and I tell this story about in my family, it was Christmas, and my mother and sister-in-law got in a fight. My mother had hidden some gifts for the children, behind some chairs, and the kids had found them and were starting to tear into them. This is on Christmas. My sister-in-law, she likes everything very ordered and, a certain time for opening the gifts. And she got mad at my mother for hiding the gifts there. She said, she was really pissed off. It was kind of, sort of demeaning, my mother, saying this is your fault. And then my mother responded as don't talk to me this way, so so it really was kind of blowing up. And now in the drama triangle, it would have been, if I'm the third person, I would have seen that that conflict, and I would have maybe stood up from my mother, right? Said, oh, she's right, don't you dare talk to her this way. I would have said to my sister-in-law, and then I would have been part of the drama triangle, because I would have been sort of like standing up for my mother, rescuing my mother, and criticizing my sister-in-law. But the way out of the drama triangle is empathy. So all I did was to my sister-in-law, I said, oh, I hear you're really upset with my mother for this. So I just empathized with her and listened to him like we do active listening. And I took a couple of minutes until she felt heard. And then I went to my mother and said, oh, I hear that you're really upset the way that you're being blamed for this and you're feeling upset. And she said, yeah, that's right, until she was heard. And then I went back and forth and listened to both sides for maybe about 20 minutes. And then I said, would you now listen to each other and reflect back? So my mother would speak to my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law would reflect back, and then she would start getting triggered and say, oh, just want to respond. I said, no, just reflect back. You'll have a chance to speak. And then she did. And then we kept doing that for another, 10, 15 minutes. And then the family members started coming into the circle. They'd all been hiding in the corners. And I was like, get me out of here. They've been hiding in the corners. And then they came into it, and we turned into a family empathy circle. And then we sort of started unpeeling what the conflict was about. And it turned out the deeper conflict turned out that it wasn't about the gifts. It was my sister-in-law didn't feel like she was part of the family, didn't feel like she was accepted. And then my father, she mentioned that, said, oh, I'm poor, come from a poor family, you're more well-to-do, I'm not accepted here. And then my father stood up and said, I came here as an immigrant, had no money, and money doesn't mean anything. I'm grateful for the grandchildren that you have through you, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was they ended up hugging each other right at the end, and then it kept going, and then my mother and her hugged each other too, hugged each other. So I just wanted to give that framework of what the drama triangle, how it works, and how empathy is the solution to that. So anyway, that's my part.
Thank you for sharing that, Edwin. I agree. What are everyone else's thoughts?
I'll piggyback on that. I guess I think that the empathy circle is the way to break those trauma cycles or those drama cycles. I think you're 100% correct that when you repeat things, you can get lost in that repetition. But part of processing through any kind of trauma or drama that comes with being a human being is acknowledging it first so that you can see that it is, and getting stuck sometimes in that cycle of reality allows it to be real. But then when other people come in are like, yep, that was real, next. It kind of just like, oh, yeah, okay, this too shall pass, fair. Yeah. So can I say you're both right? Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing I saw, as soon as the 17 blocks came up, I was like, oh nope, too many. And that's a me thing, like that's not a you thing, but an awareness thing. Like I immediately was like overwhelmed.
I agree. I actually organized them. I think Lou thought that Edwin had done that. I organized them in terms of positive and negative because I do think that the positive blocks are more easily to demonstrate in a role-playing manner how to make them bridges than the negative ones. So in terms of what you'll be seeing next from us is how we're going to try to role-play those.
Suggestion on language, just a suggestion, you don't have to listen. Instead
Please.
of positive or negative,
Yeah.
productive and unproductive.
I love that. Yes, thank you so much. Can you put that in there?
Mhm.
That's awesome. I
Put
mean,
it
let's
in
make this collaborative, everyone. I love this. Yeah. I mean, DJ talks about this, and I think it opens up the door when you expand the language. And I don't mean to speak for you, DJ. I just love how you talk about language and what it can mean for people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to like disappear on you guys. So I now have like 3 Wi-Fi systems coming into this. So we should be good. Hopefully. That's what you get for living in the middle of nowhere. And I don't have any like home phone. Can't get a home phone line. So it's a little quirky. Yeah, language is my thing. You know, it's my thing. Concepts, language, naming. That's what I'm all about. I don't believe that you can see someone else's point of view. I don't think that's possible. I think it's the person A and the person B, and it's the inner subjectivity between the two that creates connection. I have boundaries on myself. No one can see my point of view. I mean, I'm just a whole person. So that's what works for me. I don't really know what blocks are. I know Edwin said that one time I was talking about blocks to the blocks. I was talking about all this stuff that I was having, all this stress I was having about financial stability in my life. And that when I came to an empathy circle, I really wanted to like leave that out. You know, I didn't want it to interfere. But then, of course, you know, I think I was talking to you, Colin, when I was talking about that day. I was talking to you about coming to the empathy circle, just part of myself, like the part of myself that I was willing to like share. So all the anxiety and all the maybe blocks to the blocks, I didn't even bring in. But then Edwin was saying something about, I think it was when you talked about the knots, like the ball of knots that is our inner self, and that you undo the knots. It's almost like peeling back the layers of the onion, which I think, Crystal, you have said before. So I think it's the same symbolism, the same metaphor. I could be wrong. So, you know, the question for me is, you know, how much of myself am I willing to bring? And during the empathy circle, what is the purpose of me like getting to those blocks, to the blocks? Like, what is there a purposefulness to it? And, you know, I don't know, because psychological safety doesn't work for me. It has to be a different kind of safety because I'm more than a psychological being. So that's just where I'm at. It's all about language. Thank you.
So can you expand on that? If it's not psychological safety, how would you define it?
Well, psychological safety is just one part of safety. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of safety. There's all kinds of meaning around safety. And what is safety? Is safety me exposing my blocks to the blocks? Is that safety? Or is it safety that everyone in the circle kind of just accepts it? Well, you know, that's part of the circle, right? They just reflect back, supposedly, right? Isn't that part of the circle that they just reflect back what you're saying? So, like, where's the purposefulness of me untying all the knots and kind of doing the blocks to the blocks? I mean, there's a certain amount of exposure there, but I can just keep it inside myself and stay really safe. That's a guarantee, right? That's the guarantee. You know, so that's what, you know, when I was talking to Colin that day, you know, how much of ourselves do we really want to expose in any kind of interaction with another human being? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really deep. I mean, from my perspective, I want to get to a place where I see my blocks and I can step over them and around them with empathy. And so I think that as I become more and more aware of them, and whatever story comes from that could be rooted in bias, then I have the capacity to continue to see the human in front of me rather than the bias that I might be feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense for what it makes sense to you. It makes sense to you. And that's it. What I just said makes sense to me.
Right.
I just don't come from a place of bias. I don't come from a place of blocks. I come from a place of multiplicity and wholeness. And so any kind of interaction with another human being, it's not going to be the whole mate in my perspective, right? So it's just it's an attempt at a connection. And those connections can be phenomenal. They can be magical. They can be knowledge co-constructions. They can be transformational. They also can just be like kind of dull, right? And so I don't really see it as someone's judging me in an empathy circle because they're not like supposed to be judging me.
Right.
Yeah.
But we can acknowledge that we all come from a place of our brains functioning physiologically in a natural state of bias. I mean, if 80 to 90% of our decisions are done on an automated basis, I mean.
Yeah, I gotta diverge and just stop talking because,
Okay, thank you, DJ. I really appreciate everything that you shared. It was really helpful. Thank you. Violetta, I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
Yes. Crystal and I had a very short discussion on the blocks in which I basically said, I don't understand the blocks. I'd never encountered them before I met Edwin. And it's, from what I understand, a concept that's coming from the NVC community. And I have a deep respect for the community. I've never been through any of their trainings. So I just hadn't given it a lot of thought. And I really appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the beauty of it. It's just so beautiful. There was a lot of, there's a very inviting character of presentation. So I think I see them differently after what you Crystal shared than I think what I've thought before.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to be honest, my major concern with blocks of empathy, my major passion about it is, again, to move towards a culture of empathy, to move towards a society that chooses empathy first. And probably something that Edwin has used often is that some things that are called empathy are actually blocks to empathy. And I think using the blocks of empathy role and in that process of defining what empathy is not, but what could happen in place of empathy is very hopeful. I had the opposite reaction to Kara when I saw that table. I'm like, yes, this is so detailed. This is so helpful. It's going to give specifics. So it's just, going back to what DJ was sharing, how different we humans are and how our eyes see things very differently. Some thoughts I had. I wasn't quite sure what the illusory truth you're referring to in the empathy circle. Probably that's a conversation that I've missed, and I'm curious to hear. And as somebody who deals with numbers quite a bit, I was wondering what the sources are to 80%, 90%. I'm not sure where that came from, and I was like, I want to know more. I want to know more. What is the P? What is the effect size? And who researched what with what purpose? And I understand this is again a popular level presentation. It was just my curiosity there. I just was hungry to hear more.
And I love that. I love your academic nature. I love research, so I'm happy to share that with you. I don't have it
Oh,
handy right
wow.
here, but I'm happy to share it. The illusory truth effect is a research project that was just published, I think in the last 2 weeks,
Oh,
where I got that. So yeah, but I will share that with you. So
Oh,
it's a
what-
very interesting, and it just piqued my interest because as we do go into empathy circles, we are frequently repeating narratives that I think records that we've played in our life over and over again. And so I at least have seen that in some of the circles that I've been in, and you guys have been doing it much longer than I have. So, and I'm just interested in how to bridge that so that we can all connect on a deeper level. But that requires people to want to, as DJ beautifully alluded to, right? And to give her credit as well, you know, she actually is allowing me access to her Canva account. And so that's why this presentation is so beautiful. And I learned from her. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, but I'm happy to share that and I appreciate your thoughts. And I'm curious how you think we could incorporate role playing on the Excel spreadsheet, and what you think are the most important, like if we only did 3, you know, what would be the most important 3 to be sharing? Because we obviously can't do them all.
Was that a question specifically for me, Crystal? Probably not.
Yeah, for you
Okay.
and anyone, right?
Okay.
You know, if you want, if everybody would like to highlight the 3 that they would like to see in terms of a role play, like a little video sketched out. Because again, we probably can't do them all. So just to pick 3 that are top of mind.
I have
put it
some
in-
thoughts about that, but I wanted to hear from Colin and Jana first.
Can I just interject? I do not have access to the documents. It tells
Oh.
me
Oh, let me try
So,
again. I'm sorry.
I only have access to the first link.
Thank you. I'll check that now.
You can just copy the link, Crystal, into the chat for her.
I did. But
The link is there, but it tells me I do not have access.
It requires access. I don't have access either.
Oh, it says I shared it.
Oh, okay.
It says it's been shared.
So go back to your email, Crystal, and it'll be a little notice saying so-and-so needs access, and just
Yeah.
click that.
Yeah, I did that
go
for
back.
Jana, but I haven't gotten
Oh,
one for
okay.
Violetta yet. It's not showing she's tried to open it since I've
Okay.
sent it to her. So
Okay, well, go ahead and
I already sent it.
refresh, Jana. Yeah, I actually got in without even signing in, so I'm
Thank you,
good.
DJ.
It shows me 404. The page you have entered does not exist. I guess it's not an access.
I'll try again while everyone's speaking.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Violetta. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Or you can just share your screen and, you know, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. Are you talking about the 3 things from what now? I'm sorry.
The blockers
I'm a
empathy
little lost.
circle.
Are you talking about
document.
the
Projection has disappeared
Okay, so
from the list of blocks. Sorry, DJ, you're talking?
to pick 3?
Yeah, I was just hoping we could pick
No,
3
I'm sorry.
that
Go ahead,
we'd like.
Jenna.
Projection was on the initial list, but it's disappeared. To me, everything boils down to projection. So if you could put,
Can you put it back, please? Yeah,
you want me to put it back? And which
Yeah.
one, in the Google Doc?
wherever it was.
Used to
I
be
mean,
there.
it is time, so I can go back and see what changes were made. It doesn't matter. I'm sure somebody just probably made a mistake.
Projection. What do I have to do? Make it blue?
And I'm showing it says anyone with the link can. It's so
These are
weird.
links? Oh, these are links.
The last link worked for me.
So I just added projection, but it doesn't have a link. Let's see.
Oh, no, I'm talking to Violetta. Jenna, I'm sorry, we're having 2 conversations. So I just wanted to make sure everybody could access it. So are we good now?
I got it. Yes.
Thank you. So I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts, and I know Edwin wants to share his as well.
Projection.
Okay.
And DJ, are you
I go
in the
next?
document now? Can you see the blockers document that we're talking about?
I see.
Mhm.
I have to write something.
Thank you.
Where do you write here?
You can do a comment or you can write on
There's
the
a
side.
picture of projection here at this link, but it doesn't, there's nothing, how do I add to this thing?
You
This
can
thing
just do a comment up in the top right next to the link. You can put a comment there.
here, how do I add to this thing so that there's some content?
That's Edwin. You'll have to ask him. Those are his documents. Those aren't mine.
I'll just add the link.
The definingempathy.com, those are Edwin's documents that were shared with me and Lou.
Just share
Yeah.
this.
If you see my Word document, that's where I had organized them into, we're now going to call them, what again, Kara? Not positive and negative, but
Productive and unproductive.
I love that.
Aren't they all unproductive if they're blocks? How about pleasant and unpleasant?
So Colin was about to say something. Do you want to?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, just some general comments. I'm still processing it all, and I'm a slow processor, so I'd like to have some time after this as well, just to absorb it all. So I'd be happy to have a copy of the presentation if you're going to make that available to us.
Yeah, it's already
But
in the chat,
I liked how the
actually.
presentation looked.
Mhm.
Okay. I liked how the presentation looked, and the confidence with which you presented it. I also liked the simplicity of the title, from blocks to bridges, and the use of metaphor that you've on a few occasions. I think you were talking about an empathy wobble, which I find I have this image in my head which sticks, which is a good thing, I think. And the empathy anchor, of course. And was there anything else? I mean, I'm sure there's other uses of metaphor along the way as well. The bridge, of course, and this concept of the empathy bridge toolbox, having a toolbox. I can't remember what that was about. Maybe you can tell me, remind me what was in the circle. Yeah, also I agree with you in terms of there being positive, so-called productive blocks, I suppose, or whatever we're calling them now, as in caring. It's hard for me to see a negative side to caring. I suppose you could overcare too much, show too much, but yeah, interesting that you said that you saw that as a bridge. I've been reading some articles on empathy, how important it is to the well-being of a patient, regardless of the medical outcome, just to have to show caring by practicing empathy, the importance of that. I liked when you were talking from a personal perspective also, those 5 ways of being: be present, be kind, be curious, be trustworthy, be a team player. I was wondering what being trustworthy means, or how that. And you always like to drop in a few quotes, so you got a few in for us there as well. I think with Steinbeck, you can only understand people if you feel them in yourself. So I always find the quotes engaging. Something for us to take away. They can be memorable. They're just a few thoughts that I have, and I'll come back to you again with some more.
Well, that was beautiful. That was a lot. Thank you so much.
That's it for now.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. In terms of your question, you pointed to the
You're welcome.
toolbox. You asked about the toolbox, and I just want to reflect that back, that the toolbox is intended to be an open toolbox. I'd love to hear your suggestions on how we can create more bridges. I think that right now what we're looking at are a lot of blocks, and I'd like to open up the conversation as well to the bridges concept of how these blocks can become bridges. And so that's why, again, I separated the positive and negative, because I think there is a doorway for both. And I think that's a deeper discussion, but it's something that I'd love to continue to have a conversation with you about later. And I see Edwin's hand is raised. So thank you again. Those are great points. Yeah, thanks.
So there's two different ways of looking at the blocks. The one that you have listed, I think that Lou comes at it from the empathy circle. So what are the challenges? That's what we're calling challenges. We have a whole page of those, and that's what we do in the training, is specifically in the empathy circle challenges that come up in facilitating an empathy circle. Then there's the concept of blocks that person Thomas Gordon had done a lot of work on those initially, and then NVC has also sort of built on that. And they have, and that's sort of like a bit more of a general blocks to empathy. And the NVC community has done a lot of different sort of exercises that I've seen that I think are pretty good. So, and they relate to the empathy circle as well. So this is a block that that can be role played is for example, advising. Well, we can role play it. Somebody could speak, and then they, for example, Violetta, perhaps, so we could do a quick role play here to demonstrate it. Would you be up for that?
That'd be amazing. Thank you.
So give me a concept, share something, and then I'm going to show you a block, for example. Can we just role play that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Well, I want to talk about blocks to empathy today, and I think one major block to empathy is when people feel pity for me, and I don't want people to feel any pity. I just want them to listen.
Yeah, well, what I think you really should do, Violetta, is you should really study this intensely, is like do a literature review and then really study this, and that will really solve your problem. Okay, so pause. So that was a block to empathy because I advised Violetta, right? So instead of me empathizing with her, I gave her advice. And so if I was, now if I was actually to empathize with her, I don't know, somebody want to actually empathize, reflect back what you were hearing her say? So that was my block. Someone, I don't know, Kara, you look like you're tuned in. Can you just reflect back what you were hearing her say?
What I heard is that you were coming into the circle today, and you felt that one of the blocks for your empathy is when you feel people are giving you pity, and that you're not looking for that pity. You're looking to be empathized with.
Okay, can you now say, what did the difference feel like, Violetta? I mean, then you can do a kind of a debrief. Like there was a visceral felt experience between me advising you and Kara reflecting back. So what did that feel like to you?
I don't often have aggressive impulses towards Edwin, but today I did. Definitely feeling attacked, feeling lectured when I have not invited that, I have not sought it, and feeling heard, softened, welcomed, seen by Kara. Just a drastic difference.
And you can go through all the different blocks in a role play like that and actually viscerally experience them. And you could role play another one. I mean, just to role play it. So do you want to do it again? Violetta, say another piece, for example.
Sure. It's really cold where I live, and I do not appreciate cold weather, Edwin, and I don't want to live where it's north and cold.
Yeah, I'm really cold too. It's really cold here. I'm just like freezing. My hands are like totally frozen, and I'm just like chilled all over.
What?
Yeah. And Colin, do you want to try reflecting her though?
I feel that I hear that you don't like the cold weather at the moment. That I'm hearing that it's difficult for you and that you're struggling with that, and that you maybe wished you didn't live so far north.
Did you feel heard by that?
I did. I did.
And how did that feel, the difference in those two?
Yeah. Yeah. When Edwin was talking, it's like, were you even listening? You just heard one word and started talking about yourself, your self-centered something, something. And then Colin actually made space for me and heard me and saw me. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go down that whole list of blocks and actually viscerally role play, you know, a bunch of them. The one we just did would be maybe like emotional contagion. And that is if you know the book Against Empathy, that's what he is criticizing. He says if somebody has a feeling like Violetta's feeling cold, then you as the, you know, person with her, you take on that coldness. And that's what empathy is. And he says that's what's bad. And, you know, I agree with him. I actually agree with that, against empathy, but he's calling it empathy. And I actually say that what he's describing is a block to empathy. And so it's very confusing. So to viscerally feel each of those blocks, it's like you start getting attuned, you know, you just have more awareness of those in everyday life. And so judgment is another one. You know, I could say, I could have judged you, say, Violetta, you're just a weakling, you're just a wimp. You know, it's like, you can't take this cold. What's the matter with you? Right? So that would have been judgment. So that's another one. So yeah, anyway, so that's something we could do, is actually take each one of those and then kind of do kind of a role play. And that's a little bit different than facilitating an empathy circle and trying to keep people in the empathy circle. Even though those things could pop up in an empathy circle, but it's a little bit different than structuring it as a challenge. Yeah, so.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Edwin.
good.
It's really helpful. Yeah.
So I have done the blocks thing before in the trainings and as becoming a facilitator, right? And somehow I had gone to a completely different place on what blocks were until we just did that. I was like, oh, yeah, right. It's when you just don't do the empathy part, you do something else instead.
Just wondering how that resonated for everyone else, like Colin or DJ or Jenna, Crystal.
Edwin, are you talking about the role?
Yeah, the role
playing?
plays. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just kind of lost track of something.
Yeah, just wondering how that resonated for you.
It brings it to life. It can be a bit entertaining and fun. Never a bad thing. Kind of just, it's a bit, maybe it's a bit too obvious sometimes, but yeah, that's, by exaggerating, it just really brings the message home. So yeah, I don't have anything to say against it.
It's really what we do as facilitators, right? In that facilitator training that Kara reminded us of. And I don't know, I found it really fun. I find it engaging when we were challenged with it, and I also engaging to do it, to like be the little elf troublemaker doing it. You know, maybe we could practice that in buddy calls or something, like to do the opposite.
I love that, Jana. I agree with you. Yeah, I think that is an opportunity. Also in shorts, like on YouTube, you could illustrate these and to get more people involved in the movement, because it makes people laugh. Yeah.
Well, what I find striking about these blocks is that it's possible, I guess, to learn about yourself in a way that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the empathy circles. But what's interesting is that
some of the people that are involved in empathy circles actually disengage their empathy when they're outside the empathy circle. So like in the empathy circle, they've got this consciousness about empathy, like hyper vigilant empathy going on, you know, the strict reflection, the, you know, no blocks to empathy, just total connection, and some very beautiful experiences within that, actually, like amazing experiences sometimes. But when the people get out of the empathy circle, it's like they're monsters. And it's like, how does that happen? How about the control and the structuring of empathy circles, maybe that rigidity, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know how that happens. But it makes me question how we are approaching this whole block idea, and that maybe we do need to look very closely at it, because it might be that the consciousness of only reflecting and being a facilitator and having to be very attention focused on that aspect of the empathy circle, which is very hard for most people, right? It's a training thing that we have to go through. That maybe it's kind of triggering some stuff that needs to be triggered, maybe, right? And so like maybe this role playing would help with that. I'm thinking maybe it'd be more of an integration of the self instead of this fracturing of the self that I see. I'm just throwing that out there. I come from psychoanalysis and psychiatry, so can't really help it. It's very mind-based.
Well, I would add one
Monsters
thing.
is not a technical.
Is that in the empathy circle, there's a structure, and that structure is optimized for empathy. When you go outside of the structure, you're going into the normal societal structure, and the normal societal structure is not optimized for empathy. And that's part of building a culture of empathy, is to redesign the culture so that it's more optimized to support empathic connection. So in Congress, if Congress was structured in a way that the participants, instead of debating with each other, had empathy circles with each other every month, they had a certain amount, that would start to restructure the society and add those values. So I think that the empathy circle is like, here's a space where we can live this culture of empathy, and from there we can keep building that structure to expand to fill the full space of the full world culture. But at least we have a starting point that to start with where it is highly empathic. So yeah, that's kind of how I view that.
So I hear things. So what I heard from both though, DJ and Edwin, was that empathy is kind of like a muscle, and the awareness and attention that happens in the circle allows you to like hone in and do empathy. And then you leave, and some of that awareness, that intention, the attention kind of dissipates because you left. And it's that awareness and that intention that really is key to stretching that muscle. Does that sound right? Do y'all hear that? Okay.
If I can continue Kara's thought here, it's something I thought when I was doing the imaginative empathy, that we're working at several levels here, right? If I have to call language to help. Oh, hi, Wendy.
Hi, sorry to be late.
We're reflecting on what is it we saw in the presentation that I believe Crystal shared with us somewhere in the chat, and we're just kind of popcorn giving feedback. We're not in an empathy circle. One level of work we're doing is what are our goals, right? So this is training we're developing, and our ultimate goal is to change culture. It's a pretty ambitious goal that Edwin has kind of gathered us around. We want to change society. We want to bring a change that Edwin gave an example of what could it look like in Congress, but I think, you know, we're coming from different cultures. It's bigger than that. It could be bigger than this. And I think that's one level of thought we could have. And then a different level could be, I think what I saw in the presentation, probably coming from Lou mostly, but maybe also from Crystal, what could it look like in terms of behaviors? So behaviors in the empathy circle, the listener says this, the speaker does this. So it's more exchange of words, of lines, or some kind of behaviors. And then Jana is thinking in the in terms of how the blocks of empathy are even happening. What are they coming from? So her suggestion is that they're coming from the process of projection, which takes us back to what is empathy, and could we do fully empathy, and how could we ever know what the other person is feeling, thinking, experiencing. So maybe just to give, as a group therapist, I'm always thinking, okay, we're working on content right here, but what is the process? So the process has these levels that flow, and if you allow me to bring that nomenclature into the empathy circle, that's what I'm thinking. It seems like our discussion is going on several different levels, and I hope Crystal is benefiting from it. It's definitely, I think all of us are just functioning in whatever we're most familiar with.
And what I'm hearing you say is, you know, the beauty of diversity of thought, and that's why I wanted to do this in a more collaborative way. And I am curious though, because you you mentioned about Lou. I actually did this presentation on my own. So what was it that you were thinking that Lou, because that is interesting to me, that there's some thought in your mind that Lou.
When I talked to Lou about imaginative empathy, he said, well, this doesn't belong to an empathy circle because so he's just seems to be rooting it more in the empathy circle, since he has more experience in specifically facilitating a lot of empathy circles. But you obviously, I was wrong. It was Crystal. So came up
I mean, it's fine. I was just curious. That's all. So it's.
Some of the blocks we talked about are blocks from a different level. So if we think of the different levels of one type of block, PT is more of a behavior or an attitude, or whoever we want to call it. But so I did make a countdown of line 8, line 6, line 3 being the 3 major blocks that we could play out. But what Edwin was referring to as well, that we could probably reframe or rephrase the blocks in a way that they would be more phrased in a more kind of everyday language. I used pity, sympathy, judging. I think judging was actually part of the blocks, and then we could work through that.
So 8, 6, and 3 on the Excel spreadsheet.
That was my line 8, 6, and 3. That was my feedback.
And I do want to give credit. Graham actually created the spreadsheet.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
And the presentation I created, but Graham created the spreadsheet. He did a great job. So.
Okay. Yeah. I wish I had seen that scheme he had created in more detail, but you shared the presentation, so I'm going to go back and look at it. Thank you.
And the more people that have knowledge of this, I'd love to interview more people, or I'd love to learn more, because I do think this is a really important, as DJ shared, and as we all realize. Often we don't even realize what our blocks are until we are, as DJ said, in the circle, and then processing it even outside of the circle. So Wendy, I did put the presentation in the chat if you'd like to take a look at it. I put it in again for you. And let me also share a couple of documents with you. And if you would like to reach out to me, I think we're going to go into an empathy circle now. Edwin, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I think empathy circle would be good. Do you want to keep in the full group here?
Sure.
Mhm.
Would you kick us off?
4-minute turns. Anybody want to keep time?
I'm happy to.
Okay.
Let me turn on the timer if I can do the automatic timer.
Your
Okay,
hand
I'll speak to Kara then. Oh, you have that timer, that little thing in the window here. I don't
Yeah.
how to get
Just
that.
going to apps.
I've got it. And you said 4 minutes, Edwin?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe actually 3, since we only have
3.
less than an hour. Let's do
Got
3
it.
minutes.
All right, starting now.
I'm
Okay,
listening.
speak to Kara. Yeah, I think what would be helpful is, like, we do breakout rooms, like in this section, and then maybe of groups of 3, and then we do the role plays of maybe 4 different blocks to empathy, and we role play it like I did with Violetta.
I heard that you think breaking out into little groups at this point with like little 3 people so that you can rotate through 3 or 4 of the different blocks and see them in action would be beneficial.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. As one person speaks, there's a person who presents one of the blocks, and then the other person reflects back instead. So you have a comparison, and then you've got a few minutes to discuss the felt experience, because Violetta did a great job of saying, this really was annoying. It's like she really, because these blocks are annoying. They're painful. Yeah.
So I heard that you see it as someone doing the speaking and then one person blocking and another person reflecting. And then a discussion about what it genuinely feels like between a block versus a reflection.
Yeah, because you can viscerally feel the difference, and that really helps tune you into just life in general when you're in the wild. Like, Jenna's talking, a DJ is talking about, you're out in regular with your family, and you feel these different things coming at you, these different approaches, and you say, oh, that's what this is, and this is because this is what it feels like. So it does help you navigate, life in general. Yeah.
And I hear that you see this as a really beneficial way to take what's going on in the circle out of the circle so that you can get the visceral experience. And I don't think you said it, but also the visual. I mean, you can see, feel, and hear a difference between empathy and blocked empathy so that when you're out in the world, you really experience it also there.
Yeah, and in a sense, almost everything that is not empathy can be a blocked empathy. So it's like so for me, it's more like there's either empathy or there's not empathy. It is more of a, if I was going dualistic, in that sense. Yeah.
And so I heard it for you in a dualistic world, really it is. It's just there is either empathy or the not empathy, and anything that is not empathy could be a block to empathy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of how bias fits in, because I have a bias towards empathy, right? It's like I tell people I'm unabashedly for empathy. I'm not neutral. I am strongly for empathy.
So you're still working on, what I heard is you're still working on how that applies to biases, although you are aware that your bias is clearly towards empathy and that you are unabashedly pro empathy and anti the other things.
I'm not anti. I'm not against anything. I want to empathize with everything and not
I heard
be
a good
against it.
clarification. You
Yeah.
are not anti, you are pro empathy, period.
There you go. Feel deeply heard. Thank you.
Okay, I will speak to Violetta because she's underneath my screen.
Sure, I would love to hear.
Okay. So early on in the conversation, I was thinking about language and wondering if blocks could be replaced with belief systems. But I don't know that really works either. I think while blocks itself feels inherently negative, and I don't know that that's necessarily where we're going with it, I do think that language wise, that's pretty clear.
Okay, you're in the language conversation, and at the beginning of today, you were thinking, well, maybe blocks is not the best word. We could think of belief systems, but the negative connotation of blocks might actually be helpful, and making it clear that that's where this portion of the training is going.
Yeah. I think the dualistic way of looking at this conversation, not that we want to push a dualistic world, but in this conversation, I think that it is very clearly either you are being an empathetic reflector or not.
So you're kind of agreeing with Edwin and his dualistic suggestion that it's either empathy or it's not empathy, whatever you're doing when you're reflecting.
Yeah. And then thinking about blocks to bridges, what comes up is bridging the gap in our response. So if putting this back into the circle facilitator training mode, when we're discussing the blocks, it's really how to bridge that back into empathy.
And you're thoughtful about the bridges, maybe about what Crystal put as bridges over blocks, and how in the empathy circle we could build those.
And in doing that, experiencing, but really watching you experience non-empathy versus empathy, and how you could, even in the same situation, move from a block and then have the reflection and the heal that comes with that.
And just how effective the role play was for you, and watching me experience in the same situation both a blocked empathy and empathy, and how I could heal in such a short period of time.
Yeah, thank you. I just needed to hear it back.
Okay. I hear Colin and Jenna kind of struggling with their connection. But Jenna, are you available to listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay. As again, somebody who's thinking theoretically and has led groups, I'm thinking of, we're having different conversations here. One is about defining blocks. Another one is about the role of blocks. A third one is about the purpose of the training and kind of details how to do it. So I'm fighting the urge to say, okay, let's structure this into these different categories.
So you feel that the subject of blocks is really broad and has different aspects, like the role of blocks and the types of blocks, and I forget what else, and maybe the causes of blocks, and you think that maybe some more structure would help us to like talk about specific topics or a specific topic at a time.
Rather, I'm fighting the urge to structure, because I think everybody's coming so different to this discussion, and I appreciate that those differences so much that I think marinating a little bit in some confusion is helpful, and not kind of rushing the process. But I do have that urge, I admit.
So even though you have this tendency urge, you're fighting that tendency, and you're appreciating the whole richness and mix of all these different aspects of blocks to empathy that are coming up.
Still, I think it will be helpful to when we define blocks, whether we are talking about, I think Carol mentioned belief systems, behaviors, and obviously these are connected, or replacement of empathy. Some, in other words, some blocks would be within me, the bias that Crystal is talking about, and what Bloom was talking about, I would be empathizing with people that are looking like me and acting like me. And then some other blocks will be something I think is empathy, but is actually not.
So some blocks to empathy, like it's getting difficult. Some blocks to empathy, like Kara mentioned, some or is it two different aspects? I can't do it anymore. I just got distracted.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to say it again?
My guess is my time is up, even though I don't see.
No, you have like another minute, actually.
I forgot to turn it on, so my apologies.
Okay, I looked at the time.
Okay.
You have another, but help me.
When you talk about projection, you're talking, I think, more about belief formation and how do we know? How it's more about cognition. How do we build truth for ourselves? When I look at the list that Crystal shared with us, I see more behaviors and things that are done within the empathy circle. And then a lot of the conversation is more about kind of these more general, in the jungle, I think Edwin put it, in the wild, pity, sympathy, judgment, kind of phenomena that are more generic. And I think the conversation might benefit from separating these into different groups.
So you're sharing all these different aspects of empathy that have come up, and whether, like Kat mentioned, beliefs, whether beliefs are blocks to empathy, or internal, or or the list that Crystal gave us, all these different blocks to empathy, or the way that Edwin's presenting all these different aspects of empathy, like sympathy or judgment and so forth, like and role playing them. So there's these different parts or kinds of blocks, or ways of blocking.
I feel fully heard, Jenna, and I think there's another block right there outside distractions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I feel acknowledged. Let's see. I think I should maybe take my turn another time, because I think I need to pull a chart here. So someone else can.
Can you select someone? Just select someone.
Wendy, you want to speak and pick a listener?
Thank you. Yes. Crystal, would you be my listener, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Just carrying on from Violetta's comment about external blocks that Jana was just demonstrating. That's certainly what's on top for me at the moment. I obviously got the time wrong because of the time change here in the UK. And then, so I think, anyway, it's only 6:20 here. I don't know what time is it where you are, but anyway, so that's a block. But then also lots going on here. So I have no idea what the presentation was, because although Crystal, I'll better stop and let you say something.
Wendy, I'm hearing you say that you're experiencing your own share of blocks today with the time change, and certainly acknowledging that you were late and thankful to be here.
Yeah. I haven't been able to open the draft empathy keynote thing that you posted. It just keeps clicking. So I am not really in a position to comment about anything.
And you're reflecting on how you're unable to open the document and you're not feeling able to comment on anything at this point.
Yeah, but I certainly would prefer the use of the word block, because this course that we are helping to develop, my understanding it's at a very basic level, and the word block most people understand, and I think if we, yeah.
So I'm hearing you say that you prefer to use the word block because it's a word that people understand.
Yeah. So one of the challenges I feel, and I've no idea if you've covered it, it is vulnerability in terms of blocks. My vulnerability, other people's vulnerability. It would seem to be very key in terms of talking about blocks.
Yeah, and you're reflecting on how vulnerability is key in talking about blocks, both parties.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was covered at all in your presentation. And yeah.
So you're just wondering if that was covered at all in the presentation, the mutuality of vulnerability.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, there was lots that I had hoped to say on this, but I feel discombobulated having missed everything. So I'll leave it there.
And you're reflecting on how you're feeling unsettled by being late, and you're going to pause there and leave it at those points.
And Crystal, thank you so much. I feel listened to, and thank you for all your work on this. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you've done. Really appreciate all your time on it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Let's see, who hasn't listened and spoken? I think we have Colin. Would you be my listener?
Yes, Crystal.
Thank you. So I love Wendy's authenticity. That was when she sees the presentation, is part of the presentation talking about logos, ethos, and pathos, and how when people are authentic, we have more empathy for them, and that is something that I didn't talk about, but that I think is demonstrative of her actions.
So you love the authenticity that when is showing, and the importance of authenticity to be empathic.
Yeah, it really increases your capacity. And so when people show up as their authentic self and they can communicate with logic, and it just demonstrates again why this triangle of communicating and connecting is so important.
Crystal, my connection is coming and going. I didn't catch what you were saying.
Can you turn off your video, Colin? It'll give you more bandwidth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I'm going to go down to 2 minutes. I forgot to, forgive me, I'm juggling. I'm taking notes and listening and doing the timer, so my apology.
Okay, I'm hearing that, yes, there's a lot going on for you at the moment. There's a lot of different tasks that you're trying to do at the same time, so you're apologizing for that.
Yeah, and Jana and Violetta did a beautiful job of honoring their own time, and so I'm very thankful. And that just speaks to blocks, right? Multitasking.
And so you just were acknowledging also Jana and Violetta keeping time, and yeah, another block is multitasking.
Yeah, and as a facilitator, you are multitasking. You are trying to stay in tune with both people and your own biases, your own issues, while balancing the growth of the empathy movement.
And this is also shows up when a person is facilitating, because you're also trying to be aware of your own biases, as well as listening and reflecting back.
So I love what Edwin said about doing the one-person speaker blocks. I love what Kara said about language in this dualistic way of viewing. I'm going to ponder that.
So you're talking about Edwin, admiring Edwin when he was talking about the one-person speaker blocks, also language and the importance of language, and this dualistic approach as well.
Mhm. And then also what Violetta said, and that's why I laid out that roadmap initially in the second document, talking about the different parts of empathy blocks. And I agree with her that it needs to be broken down, and that's why diversity of thought is so important for us to do this together.
Okay, so you're just referring back to the roadmap in one of the documents that you shared, that there's different parts to the empathy blocks, and that you're really appreciating the diversity of thought here amongst us in the group to
I just want
help
to
you
say
flesh this out.
one more thing, just to continue the conversation, and that's that I looked up the definition for bias. It's defined as a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group.
Okay, so the definition of bias, it's a prejudice in favor of or against one person, thing, or group. And you'd just
Yes.
like to point that out to us.
And that is a block.
And that is also a block.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, I would like to nominate DJ. Will you be my listener?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I liked the framing of blocks being an opportunity, that Crystal talked about in her presentation. And I'd like to talk about that a little.
Do you want to talk a little bit about blocks being opportunities, which Crystal mentioned in her presentation?
Mm-hmm. And tying that in with the importance of self-awareness, to truly understand who we are, what our biases are, and I see that as being a really important part of empathy also.
So I didn't get that very beginning, but I'm going to try. So self-awareness for you is a very important part of recognizing your own biases. And this is something that Crystal brought forward in her presentation.
Yes.
Did I leave something out?
Yes. No, that's fine. So I'm just hearing an echo now, by the way. Yeah, so
Are you there?
Lost.
I think we lost him. Okay.
Are you
There
there?
he is.
sorry about that. It just went again. Yeah, I'm going to finish up if that's okay. I would just like to say, again, just to repeat what I was saying before about blocks being an opportunity. I think that's something that we can explore further. I would be happy to give my input on that after the call. I'd just like to thank Crystal for her presentation, and I need to finish up now if that's okay. I was mentioning it to Edwin.
So you need to finish up. You had mentioned to Edwin, I think that you have to leave. So you want to thank Crystal for her presentation, and you'd like to talk further after this session about how blocks can be opportunities.
Yes,
think
thank you.
maybe. Oh, okay. Was that
Thank you,
complete?
DJ. I didn't hear everything at the end, but I think you got as much as it was possible to get. And thank you. And I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Colin.
Bye,
See you
Colin.
I'll
next
see you
time.
next week. Okay, bye then.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you, Colin.
Colin's visiting his parents, so he had limited time. Yep.
Okay, Edwin, will you be my listener?
Yeah, listening.
Yeah, this is a very fruitful conversation. I think that my mind is being very opened up because initially I didn't like the word blocks at all.
Yeah, you find it's a very fruitful conversation, and your mind is opening up, and you didn't like the term blocks at all.
Right, but after Kara was describing the way she sees it and everybody else kind of pitching in, I'm not sure anymore. I like bridges. I like the idea of bridges. I think bridges are healing, empathetic.
Yeah, you like the term bridges, and it's empathetic, and you broke up a little bit there. And you're muted now. There you go.
Yeah. Let me just give me 1 second here. Oh, okay. So, but what I want to say before I run out of time, I don't know what happened to my time, that I thought it was very interesting when Violetta and Edwin were doing the role playing. What I really loved was how Violetta kind of said, you know, I never have judged Edwin before, or something like that, or I've never felt, did you say aggression? I'm not sure what you said, or assertiveness, or
Aggression.
I don't know what it was, but aggression. You never felt aggression towards Edwin until that moment.
Yeah, so you really find it interesting. You're kind of tickled by what Violetta was saying, that when I didn't reflect back, but just advised her that she just, you know, mentioned she just felt aggression. And yeah, she never felt that before towards me.
Yeah, and that really made sense to me, Violetta, because I don't feel any aggression towards Edwin at any time for any reason. You know, it's like he's the last person I would feel aggression toward. But it was so interesting in my mind that, you know, this intersubjectivity, it really has two whole people coming together. And sometimes that togetherness is just not going to happen. And it actually creates blocks.
So you're saying that so the intersubjectivity can create blocks?
Through the lack of connection. If you think of a lack of intersubjectivity, so you have your subjectivity here and you have your subjectivity here, right? Person A, person B, right? Subjectivity, and they're emanating their subjectivity, but to have that intersubjectivity, to have that meeting of the energy of that that actual conjoining, that actual empathetic kind of exchange that we are all looking for, probably. It's just totally not happening when the blocks are coming from one person, like person A, but what's happening in person B, they're actually creating a block that wasn't there before.
So
the empathy circle itself is creating a block.
So there's that connection between that people have, and that the block is blocking that connection between people. They're interconnected with each other, and then that one thing can sort of block that subjectivity, that interconnection between each other, and you have a break in the connection.
Right. And that person B actually comes away from that circle experience with a block they may not have had before.
Yeah, and you've had a sense of connection, but then previously, then you leave with a sense of a disconnection and a block that you didn't have when you first started.
Yeah, I feel fully heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Crystal. Yeah, so the purpose of looking at the blocks is to define empathy better. That I think when we did the role play with Violetta, you can compare the two experiences and it just helps to define what empathy is.
So you're saying the purpose of the blocks is to look at empathy better and the role play and that whole process.
Yeah, it's more like to be aware of the blocks, that we're able to, you know, people have done a lot of work to really name all the different blocks, you know, create little role plays of the blocks, and then you can experience it, and you have a visceral sense of, oh, when it's in empathy, it feels really good, and when it's not empathic, when it's advising, I hate Edwin, or I feel aggressive towards Edwin.
I love that. I'm sorry. You're speaking to how when we experience empathy, it's like that visceral experience versus not. And the purpose of the blocks is to look at empathy and be aware of the blocks. And others have done this work, and you're sharing how we're all building on it and the role-playing process.
Yeah, and it helps when people are talking about, you know, these different qualities, and we'll talk about that next week too, because we're going to look at how people are defining empathy. And a lot of the definitions of empathy that are out there can be blocks, like the Bloom story. It's like, no wonder people are confused, because it's like, yeah, it's this lack of clarity.
And you're speaking to this lack of clarity, how that definition of empathy, the lack thereof, because there are so many different definitions out there, can be a block itself. And it helps when people look at the qualities.
And when we do the role plays, we're role playing it. It's sort of the broader general terms, like you know, advising, judgment, sympathy, projection. These terms are broader terms that fit outside of the empathy circle. So by bringing those into the empathy circle, we can role play them within the context of the empathy circle.
Yeah, and so how by bringing these concepts into the empathy circle, whether it be judging, sympathy, projection, or advising, role-playing them raises our awareness.
Yeah, within the empathy circle, because we kind of did a mini empathy circle here, right? It's like I didn't empathize with Violetta, I did a block, but then Kara did the empathy circle of actually listening to her empathically. So I have to empathize with Joan. She can't open the jar of canola oil, and I got the. So
we are just rolling in empathy here. So
we're gonna need to use pliers. Okay, you just want to reflect that, though.
Oh, I did. We're rolling in empathy.
Oh, we're rolling in empathy.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can't. It's like it's got a double layer. So, okay, I feel fully heard. Yeah. Okay. You can't open these bottles. Talk about a block to empathy. The designers didn't empathize with the user.
Oh, I love that. Well, before I continue on and share, I'd love if Wendy has had a chance to look at the presentation. I'm wondering if we can just flip it up a little and give her a chance to speak and someone listen.
Oh, thank you. You're so thoughtful, so empathetic. Thank you. I'm conscious that you also mentioned that multitasking is a block to empathy. So on the one hand, I have managed to open it, and I just going through it. I like, you know, the statistics and the definitions. I now understand about using the word bridges rather than blocks. And yeah, I'm multitasking, listening to what you're all saying and sharing. So I'd rather you just, you know, carried on with your turn. If that's
excellent.
But thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate your sharing all that. just want to make sure that we're all inclusive and everyone has their voice heard fully. So thank you. Well, I'm going to pass my turn because I'm more interested in hearing what everybody else says. So who would like to speak? Anyone?
Carrie, you're muted. You said something.
I was just mumbling to myself that I was like, I don't think I have anything. Everything's been covered that went through my brain. I don't know that I have any answers, but yeah, what she said, what he said, yep. Yeah.
So it sounds like we're still at an impasse on blocks and bridges and how to view this. And it sounds like we need more systems in place to really break down the structure of blocks and bridges if we choose to go that path. And I'd love to encourage each of you to continue participating in the Google Doc if anything comes to mind post this session in either document, and certainly reach out to me as well. Lou and I would like to present a full presentation again in a few weeks once we've had an opportunity to connect.
Can I get coachy and ask a question? So you're seeing that there are so many facets going on here. That's what I heard you say. Can you be specific and speak on what it is? Say more things on that.
Okay, so I think when we're looking at behaviors versus looking at this from a big picture, I tend to focus on the big picture, and Graham did a great job on focusing on the specifics. And so what we're going to do and go back is to create the 3 that Violetta suggested. If anybody has different opinions on the 3 that we should try to demonstrate in role play, please let me know. Any thoughts on that? And so I think other than, you know, the question of bias and what role that plays, I think I'm hearing each of you say you'd like more clarification on that. And you'd like to see the lists of references as Violetta requested for the research as well. Am I missing anything?
Crystal, could I just check? I didn't know what the 3 were. You mentioned 3.
Yes. So Violetta, did you highlight those?
I tried, but I didn't have access to edit. I just had a viewing access. In the chat, I put that I pointed to rows 8, 6, and 3 as the
Right.
ones I.
Okay.
They're not. They don't have really titles, DJ. They're specific. I don't have the document opened. Let me give you 1 second.
So 3 is listen, leaving out a key portion of what the speaker said. 6 is listener, leaving out a key portion of what the speaker said. 6 is listener partially or fully reversing what the speaker has said. And 8 is listener judging the speaker in some way. And so those 3 are what Violetta is suggesting that we would act out and potentially use as a video for facilitator training.
Okay, so I guess I'm really confused. Okay, I'm sorry. I have some of the documents, but then they disappear, and I don't know what's going on. So I apologize. So 8, 6, and 3 are coordinated with the Excel sheet that talks about problems that could happen when a facilitator is facilitating, right? Now, how do those relate to blocks? Is
Well,
it specific?
My apology, please proceed.
No, I just would like to know what
Yeah.
the block names are, because I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
So if a listener leaves out a key portion of what the speaker said, it could be perceived as a block depending upon everything that encompasses what was said. For example, if someone made a racial comment, you know, that could be a block. If someone left out a judgment, so it's a block. So the point is that it's a block. And I had originally thought of going through the actual blocks themselves and naming them, but then I thought, you know, when we start doing that, then people are going to start going, you're doing this block or that block. So I agreed with Graham that it was best to just stick with the behavior rather than defining it as a block, but just stick with the behavior. But I'm open to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I just put the roadblocks in there. So those are 12 roadblocks to good listening. And those are from Thomas Gordon. I think that list is, I think it's a more general approach to approach it from the general terms like that. Like they have, directing, warning, advising, persuading, moralizing, judging. And so there's already a whole tool set up for that others have done that we can just build on. They have examples. So you look at it from the broader culture terms, but then it also applies to the empathy circle. So and in the empathy circle, it can be broken down in that when the speaker speaks, like Violetta spoke, there's all of these different possible responses people have. And those are the blocks, any one of those 12, and there's a lot more. And then you can, so it merges the broad view as well as it in the empathy circle, I think, by doing the role playing. So and I think that's more, people can generally apply it just to their everyday life. I know Lou is concerned about people starting to judge each other about having blocks, because that happens a lot. You're just judging, so they're judging the judging, right? Or you're advising, so they're judging the advising. So they're responding with a block to a block, which is like which happens a lot in societies. But still, I think the visceral felt experience of those differences is immensely helpful. I mean, to feel the difference, like for Violetta to have felt her anger with me, it's like, oh, if Edwin wasn't listening and doing a lot of listening, I would just always advising me, I would have a whole different attitude towards him. So I think that's immensely just helpful, and it's visceral. You feel it, and that's just so powerful.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. In fact, we were looking at this in terms of helping white males who typically run law firms become more aware of their lack of empathy by having them in the metaverse experience circumstances like this, just like a role play where they experience it. And so I think the power of role play is high. And that was in the point of trying to launch my company and build diverse teams by design. And how can we empower people who haven't had these experiences? They haven't been oppressed in certain circumstances. And so this empathy circle raises people's awareness of, when someone is listening but leaving out a key portion of what's said, or partially, or reversing it, or judging the speaker in some way. I think those are 3 really important skills to teach facilitators so they can see it. And we're all evolving and working on this process together. So I really appreciate the link, Edwin. We'll take a look at that as well, and I'll share it with Lou.
I do want to say that we're looking at defining empathy in the broader context. So it's not just within the context, it's within empathy circles too, but we do want to have an awareness of the broader definition of empathy as well, that there's 2 sort of layers there.
Yeah, I would like to say something about the reflection. So let's go back to Violetta and Edwin and Kara, right? So just looking at Violetta and Kara, when you reflected back to Violetta, it's possible, in my experience, but I could be wrong, it's possible that Kara isn't really feeling empathy. She's just saying the words back, right? So she's following the structure of the empathy circle, which Edwin was not, ironically, following that structure, right? So as a facilitator, we're just kind of like keyed into, there's a structure that needs to be followed. And so that listening list goes into out of the structure, right? But that doesn't have any guarantee about empathy. I can't really say, just sitting here like a silent listener, right? oh, Kara was so empathetic with Violetta. You know, that must be really wonderful for Violetta to receive this wonderful, empathetic reflection. I mean, I have no idea. I just know that afterwards, Violetta didn't say, I'm feeling a lot of aggression towards you. You know? I can't help it. I just can't believe that you said that. And it's like really stuck in my mind as being very fruitful, very good information, you know? And I believe you being authentic, like Crystal was talking about authenticity. That was very authentic what you said, even though you knew it was role playing. Yeah, but it doesn't guarantee empathy from Kara.
The one thing that we have is
Okay.
it's up to Violetta to determine whether she feels heard or not. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. That's not the,
Right.
you know, that you as the listener, it's not up to you. It's up to Violetta to see what level does she feel heard? Does she feel heard enough? Like, oh, I feel heard enough. I feel, and you say I feel. So that is sort of the determining factor, the judgment in terms of feeling heard. And if you just get a parroted response, superficial, and you feel I feel heard, that's all we can kind of. That's the only judgment we really have, or determination. You know, I don't know what else. There's not much. It's really for Violetta to have been heard to her satisfaction. That's the I don't know, it's not the judgment. It's the criteria that we're going for. Yeah.
Right. And I think the criteria is really good. I do. I think it really works. And I think people are not good at listening, and I don't think they're good at reflecting. And this is a training in that. But listening, you know, has multi-levels, of course. But what I'm saying is that it is enough just to be reflected back. It is enough.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's empathy doesn't matter, because she wasn't like feeling anything really negative. She doesn't come away from that experience damaged or triggered or something less than, you know. At the very least, she's cool, you know. Oh, that's cool. All right, that's what I said. Thank you very much, Kara. It's not necessarily empathy, but it's not the opposite of empathy, which I don't know. What is the opposite of empathy, Edwin?
Not empathy. The one thing is we're always empathizing with each other. Like there's empathy going on here in the group without reflection. It's just the reflection is helping deepen the empathy is how I see it. So we're just empathic human beings, you know, to varying degrees, and the active listening, the empathic listening just helps raise the level of that empathy is what I see. So it's sort of degrees of empathy, and we can't, like, you know, it's like and Violetta can just keep going until she feels heard to that level of empathy that she feels satisfied with. Yeah. So anyway.
Got it. Thank
so
you.
I just say what I heard there was an awareness of the difference between being empathetic and feeling empathetic, which I think is a good awareness.
I absolutely love that. I am going to contemplate that for like a week. No, seriously, that is profound to me. You know, that's profound.
What you're talking about is pretty profound.
It really is. I think we are being empathetic, just being alive, a lot of us, right? That is our human potential that we live every day. We're already there, you know. So many of us are there, right? But that doesn't mean we're feeling empathy all the time.
Okay, it sounds like we've kind of come to a close. Next week is different models. There's different models of empathy. Almost every person has a different model. It's like there's general category models of empathy. So I'll be presenting that. So I got to get busy on presenting that. And so like to end with our appreciation for Crystal for a beautiful project here, presentation, which will be continued, I guess, we'll do another round with Lou, it sounds like. So yeah, we'll see you next week, and thank you so much. I really enjoy the process. It's fun, this exploration, and thanks for bringing all your diverse thoughts to the table here. So bye until next time.
Thank you.